As I want to look at Philippians chapter 1, and I'm going to be looking at verses 3 to 11. Philippians is one of my most favorite books of the Bible. God has used it to challenge me to work in my life in so many different ways. And so it says, and the book, the letter was written to the church at Philippi, and that's where Paul went, and God called to go over to the Macedonia, and he went to Philippi. And you know the story. They got a little group together, and then this girl that was filled with evil spirits or with a demon, whatever. She was going around talking, say, "Oh, look at these are men of God. They're proclaiming Christ." And Paul turned around and said, "Get out of there." And she became normal, and the people that lost money complained. They were thrown into prison, they were beaten, they were put into stocks, and they had chained, and yet they sang praises in the jail. An earthquake came, all the stocks came off, the jailer came down, and they said, "Well, what must I do to be saved?" And they told them, and they were baptized. And a church grew out of that, and it was a powerful church. I think it was probably his favorite church. They had a special bond with these. That's what I want to think about for the next few weeks. But one of the realities in some of the churches today is the fighting that takes place within churches. Sometimes, I guess maybe because we get passionate about something, and there've been some, we've gone through some pretty rough fights. I have known churches where there have been conflicts between members, between the leaders, and with pastors. One church that I know, they ran off a godly pastor, then called another godly man to serve, and then fired him too. And a number of the people in the church left because of that, and the church leaders still didn't figure out that it was they had the issues. But the community knew, and the community people just stayed away. They didn't want to go to that church anymore. But what is really great and refreshing to see is it's a blessing to see churches that love their pastors, love their families, love one another. They have good, warm, caring fellowship, and they care. They're giving people, taking care of one another. You may have different ministries, going to nursing homes, soups, kitchens, jails, mission trips, all kinds of things that we can get involved in. And I've been blessed to have been part of a number of these churches. And this is, the relationship in these kind of churches with between a pastor and the people is really special. And everyone is blessed when the church is loving and caring and working together, and the community notices. It's amazing whatever takes place supposedly silent or just within the church body, the whole community knows, sometimes more than church members. They got a gossip line out there that's really good. But the church at Philippi was a good church. It had a very strong love and Paul had a very strong love for that church. They had supported him in his ministry in many ways, and especially through financial help. The church at Philippi was used by God to make Paul's mission work possible, because they helped out in so many ways. They had a good fellowship. They had a good fellowship. They were involved in different ministries. He loved them and had a special relationship with them. And so what I want to think about is what's so special about the church at Philippi, and how can we be more like that church? So I want us to look at this Paul's letter in Philippians chapter 1, verses 3 to 11, and see what Paul says about the Philippian church. And he says in verse 3, "I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always offering prayer with joy in my every prayer for you all, in view of your participation in the gospel from the first day until now. For I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. For it is only right for me to feel this way about you all, because I have you in my heart, since both in my imprisonment and in my defense and confirmation of the gospel, you are partakers of the grace with me. For God is my witness, how I long for you all with the affection of Christ Jesus. And this I pray, that your love may abound still more and more in real knowledge and discernment, so that you may approve the things that are excellent, in order to be sincere and blameless until the day of Christ, having been filled with the fruit of righteousness which comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. This is a special church. This is what I would call a good church. It was a good church. And so there's some descriptions of a good church that I think can be applied to our church and other churches. But it was a joyful church. Yeah, that's one of the things that really stands out in this. They were a joyful church. Because that's what he was saying. I thank God in all my prayers, and remembers offering prayer and with joy, with every prayer for you all, because of their involvement. It was a joyful church. They brought joy to Paul, and people were being saved, and they found the joy of Jesus. And he had a great time of fellowship with them, and he worked with them in the ministry, and when he left, they continued the work, and people were blessed, people were being reached, and they can maintain that communication with him for as long as Paul lived. See, he was filled with gratitude for him, and the reason he was filled with gratitude is that they prayed for him, they gave support to him, physically and monetarily. They took part in his ministry wherever he went. They gave gifts to him, and they encouraged him. They helped him. So he had a special relationship, because that church brought so much joy to Paul and to others who became part of it. See, our church should be recognized as warm, loving, joyful church. And so the question is, do we find that joy, love, and fellowship here in our church? Well, I've experienced it. And the thing about it is that, as I shared, if there are problems and issues that take place within the church, any kind of fighting, community knows. But when the church is loving and caring and sharing and supporting one another, ministering to one another, the community knows. And we radiate Jesus Christ in our lives. So we should do all we can to make our church a place where people can come and enjoy fellowship, and to get into God's Word, and to be able to share lives together as we do here. So so it was a joyful church. When the people went and they were happy about serving Jesus, about what Jesus is doing, and because they were happy in Jesus, the good news spread. The good news spread. But one of the things that stands out in here too is that it was a generous church. Look at verse 5, and where he says, in view of your participation in the gospel from the first day until now. And that participation is the sharing in the preaching of the gospel. But then you go over to chapter 4. You go to chapter 4, verses 14 to 19. And he said, and Paul's writing, nevertheless, you have done well to share with me in my affliction. You yourselves also know, Philippians, that at the first preaching of the gospel after I left Macedonia, no church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, but you alone. For even in Thessalonica you sent a gift more than once for my needs. Not that I seek the gift itself, but I seek for the profit which increases to your account. But I have received everything in full and have an abundance. I am amply supplied, having received from Epaphroditus what you have sent, a fragrant aroma, an acceptable sacrifice, well-pleasing to God. And my God will supply all your needs according to the riches of his glory. So you can see in here that the church helped Paul out, helped him out financially. They made a very valuable contribution to the spreading of God's message. Paul, at the time of writing, he was in prison. He couldn't go anywhere. And he worked as a tent maker, supporting himself in his ministry. He did not take money from the churches. And yet the Philippian church kept sending him money so that he could do the work of an evangelist. Paul said that they were partners in the gospel. They were instrumental in spreading the news of Jesus all through the Roman Empire as a result of their support of Paul. And their giving still impacts the world today. If you think about it, because Paul wrote this when he was in chains. And if it wasn't for him being in chains and the support the church gave him, we might not have a lot of the New Testament. We may not know about Jesus. So even their gifts have to continue to have an impact upon all of our lives and upon all the churches. And then, the church at Philippi was the only church that helped support him and his ministry. They saw Paul's needs, and they responded again and again and again. He didn't ask, they just did it. They felt that was, he came and brought them a message of hope and eternal life. They were going to be God's children, and they know what's going to be taking place. They're excited about their faith, and they wanted to share it with the world. And Paul was that missionary who was sharing it with the world. So they contributed their practical help also. And not only did they get the financial help, but Epaphroditus brought the gift, and he stayed with him. And he stayed with him and helped Paul out during those times. Okay, Paul's stuck in this room, chained to Romans. Somebody went out and had to buy his groceries and did all these other things. And so they were a blessing to Paul. They were really, really special to him. So through our giving, we make the work of the ministry of our church possible. I mean, it costs money to have a building, to take care of the building, utilities, all these things. But so we need, that. But there are other ministries. We, if we want to do Bible studies, we have to get materials. We do things to minister. It costs, and we get to share in that. Then we give to missions. We help get the word out about Jesus to people around the world, as well as in our community. And so, we're able to help share the gospel with all people as we minister to people. If we, go to nursing homes, people are in need, or, we give financial help. Maybe people maybe they get sick and people bring food, and we minister in the name of Jesus as a family. God blesses us, and the message of Jesus goes out strongly, saying that God is love. Jesus loves you, and that is shown through his body, his local body, his church. So giving too is also a way to worship God. Look at verse 18 in chapter 4, verse 18. I won't read the whole thing, but having received from Epaphroditus what you have sent, a fragrant aroma, an acceptable sacrifice, well-pleasing to God. These fragrant aroma. The Jews, when they were having their sacrifices, it was sort of like a barbecue in a way. Not everything was totally destroyed, they cooked the meat, and the family got part, and the priest got a portion of it. It's sort of, so you know what it's like when you're cooking, grilling some meats or steaks out of it. It's a fragrant aroma. Well, that's what it is to God. Their sacrifice, the Bible, Old Testament used that term, a fragrant aroma to God. And our giving of ourselves, our time, of our possessions, it is a fragrant aroma to God. A sacrifice is not necessarily where we're totally consumed. A sacrifice is a gift given to God. They had Thanksgiving sacrifices, all kinds, but it was just presented to honor God. And Day of Atonement, they had the complete burnt offering, and they had burnt offerings for other things, but most of the sacrifices were gifts given to God. That's what they were, gifts given to God. We give ourselves to God as living sacrifices, gifts for God to use. And as we serve Him, as we give to Him, we were well-pleasing to God. And we are blessed as a result. See, when we give ourselves and our possessions to God, we are worshiping Him. We worship Him. Worship is more than just coming on Sunday morning or whatever to sing some songs, hear a message, have prayer. That's worship. No, worship is a lifestyle. All that we do should be a lifestyle that lifts up and glorifies God. People should look at us, and as I've said many times, look at us, and our light shine in such a way that He's glorified. It's His light within us, and that they can see that honors God. By living a life that in obedience to His command, under His leadership as best we can. And God uses us. He blesses us. But the other thing, too, that stands out in this passage, going back to chapter 1, this was a faithful church. It was a faithful church. Verses 6 and 7. For it is only right for me to feel this way about you, because I have you in my heart, since both in my imprisonment and in my defense and confirmation of the gospel, you all are partakers of the grace with me. For God is my witness, how I long to... I went too far. But they were faithful. When Paul left, they didn't just fall away, say, we won't have this leadership. They trusted God, they worked with God, and Paul expresses confidence that God's still at work in their church. And that's the neat thing, is that God works within us. See, Paul and Silas planted the seed. They cultivated it, but God is the one who causes the growth. We need to remember that we can't make a church grow. We can have things to try to bring people in, but only God can grow. We plant the seeds. We cultivate the soil. We share the good news of Jesus. And people will come if you invite them. So when we give ourselves and everything to God, it's an act of worship. And when we're faithful to Him, He uses us and He blesses us as we give ourselves to Him. God's faithfulness guarantees the completion of what He's done. Whatever He's begun, He's going to complete it in us. He's perfecting us. He's working in us. We're not there yet. That's the beautiful thing about it. He knows where we are. He knows our weaknesses. He knows where we are in our spiritual walk. And the idea is that He wants us to grow and to grow and to grow in love with Him and in service for Him. And then the completion of the work of grace will occur on the day Jesus returns. It'll be complete then. But He's still working on us now. Still working on all of us. And to make us into a person that blesses Him, and then where He blesses us. See, God had a plan for the church and was using them to accomplish His work. As I said with the girls, this is a small church. We don't have, we're not known too many places. But God uses us no matter what size church we're in. A church can be a blessing to God to accomplish His work. God has a purpose and plan for all of us. And He's promised to complete what He starts with His people. And then what stands out too in verse 9, it's a loving church. It's a loving church. And he says, "In this I pray that your love may abound still more and more in the real knowledge and all discernment." I love that. That your love may abound still more and more. It was a loving church. He prayed that their love would grow more and more. It was already, like I say, a loving church, but there's no limit to love. There's no limit to love. The more you love, the better it gets. And so he's wanting the church to just grow even more and more in love. And it's through knowing God and experiencing God's love that our love gets deeper and richer and used by God. And we experience God's love, as he said in here, that in all real knowledge and discernment is getting into God's word and getting to know God. And we grow in love. So love grows through fellowship with one another. That's how fellowship is so important. That's how we get to know one another and share with one another. And that's how Nalko's nephew got involved in a church and became a believer because of the love of the fellowship of that church. They just brought them right in. They were churches doing things, and God was blessing. And now her nephew and his wife are believers. They've been baptized into the church, and they're happy. They're excited. Why? A loving congregation makes a difference. There's a difference when you've got a congregation that's fighting over the color of the carpet. Oh yeah, we had at Riverside had a green carpet, and I forgot. And people get really upset. Okay, we're back up, people. Yeah. But in love, there is unity. There's a seeking to bless one another. And so Paul found joy in remembering them before the throne of grace in prayer. Every time he prayed for them, he brought joy to his heart. And perhaps the deepest Christian fellowship and joy we can experience in this life is praying with and for one another. And as we grow in our love with God and with one another, Jesus radiates through us and the community, and we will impact the community for Jesus. There's I was wondering about doing it. I had this separate, but if I ask you, if I want to talk about Magnolia Baptist Church in Alpha, Florida, what would you say? Huh? Where's that, right? And if I said, well, it's near Blountstown, yeah, right, okay. But if I said it's about 30 miles southwest of Tallahassee, Florida. Oh, okay, I got an idea where, right? Magnolia is a small church in the middle of nowhere. It is right in the middle of nowhere. You've got the main highway that comes down, goes this way to go to Blountstown, and this one goes over here, and they'll take you to a road that'll take you to Panama City. And it's right in the middle, a mile and a half, either way, right in the middle, and tree farms and other farms. And we had to get down a dirt road. It's paved now, but it's a small church. And it doesn't have any influence within our Southern Baptist Convention. It doesn't lead the convention in numbers or in giving. It's pretty much an unknown church. Well, to the world it is. But this little church is known by God. This church has probably had more of an impact on the kingdom of God than a lot of the large churches, in that most all the pastors were students studying and preparing for the ministry. They would come in for 2 or 3 years, and then they'd move on to other ministries, and they'd get more students in. And their influence and their love just had spread. And so there's a unity in this congregation, and it has supported and encouraged many students who have gone into ministries. In my own case, Magnolia Baptist was a blessing to me and our family for years. It was, I would say that Magnolia was our Philippian church. And I'll tell you why. They knew that we were going to be looking for, planning to go into missions. I worked a job up in Dothan, Alabama. Now was back in school finishing up her degree. Had a baby the first time instead of a degree, so had to make up for that. But, they helped support us through the years with letters, phone calls, prayers, and gifts while we were on the mission field in Spain and in Maine. And we received a lot of encouragement from that little church. And we've been blessed. When we were in Spain, I made 2 newsletters a year. Typed them up. This is before computers. Had to use typewriters. And I would mail that newsletter and the updated mailing list to Magnolia. They would make copies. They would buy the postage. They mailed it out, those letters out all the time, twice a year. And they prayed for us and helped out financially. And when we were at the Home Mission Board up in northern Maine, I took care of my own newsletters, but they would send a little bit of money. It wasn't a lot. It was a little bit, but that your $20, $30 makes a big difference when you don't have much at all. And that's when that actually was worth something. And they took care of us in that way, and they called and they wrote letters, and they are a blessing. And we were able to, through that ministry, ordain a man to work with Koreans in Panama City. We got a house started. They weren't involved in missions, but they became involved. They had an impact on the community. And that church is going strong today. And the pastor of that church is one of the men that was a member of that church, and when we were ministering there. So, so because of Magnolia Baptist, I have a better understanding of Paul's love for the church at Philippi. See, the church at Philippi was used by God to make Paul's work possible. They encouraged him, loved him, supported him the best way that they could. And he loved them and had a special relationship with them. In the same way, Magnolia helped make our ministry possible. So they always have a special place in our lives. So when we came back from Spain, or even in Maine, or we'd visit churches to give reports about missions, I always mention Magnolia. Because Magnolia, like as Paul did Philippi, encouraged us and encouraged churches to look at how they could provide real support to missionaries. And so that church is a very special place. A number of the people that we knew, they're gone. They've gone home. But the church is still there, still ministering and doing a good work. But I just wanted to share that church, small, but still had a big impact. So no matter the size of a church, God uses us to have an impact on our community, on people in the church, and even outside the church. And a church with these characteristic traits is a good church. A church that honors and glorifies God. And as a result of this church, the church is blessed. Lives are changed. And we have a greater impact upon our community for reaching this world for Christ. That's why God has us here. To have people come to know Jesus, and they come to know Him through us, His body, His people, in His local church. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for your word, and thank you for just reminding us of who you are and how we relate to you and how you use us. And I pray, Father, that as Paul prayed, that the love we have for one another will grow and continue to grow and spread into this whole community, and that the future of this church it will grow even brighter as we see people come to you in faith and we'll see their lives change. And I know you've done it with others. I pray you'll do it with us. Begin in our hearts to fill us with your presence, with a sense of your presence, fill us with your love, your compassion, and with a desire to serve you in any way you want. So thank you again for your presence with us this morning. Thank you for this church and for the love that we've experienced in the short time we've been here. And pray that that love will continue to grow in Jesus' name. Amen. And we're going